All right. Looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here. I've missed you guys. We've been off in Italy for the last week, and I've been enjoying some much needed downtime, but there's a lot going on, and we're going to talk about it. In Gaza, there's some tragedy that happened today, and and triumph, I guess you could say, up in Lebanon, and a whole lot in between. So we're going to talk about everything. I appreciate you all being online. Tell me where you're watching from. And I am coming to you from Yerevan, Armenia tonight. We just got here today, and we just started our annual Armenia tour. We've got about 20 uh, hot Zonians who signed up to come to Armenia with us. And if you have not been to Armenia, you're going to really want to be on next year's trip. Let me tell you, it is. I've been to most countries on the planet, and it's the best one I've found so far. I mean, it is just awesome here. We love everything about Armenia, and so we're hoping that those of you who are interested in coming to Armenia with us next year will sign up. You can send an email to info@holtonnews.com, info@holtonnews.com, and we will send you the details about next year's trip. We're finalizing all those now. So let's get to the news. Uh, of course, we'll start with the bad news, and that is that Israel sadly lost 4 IDF troops today in a building collapse that was as they were fighting their way through the central part of Gaza. Uh, this has been an ongoing problem. Uh, Hamas uh, booby trapped every building just about, and that makes it a military target. And so, if Israel really wanted to genocide the people in Gaza, they could just carpet bomb the whole place. They wouldn't need to send infantry troops in to go door to door, house to house in order to try to clear the place out. But that's what they're doing. And because they're having to go door to door, house to house, they are putting themselves at very great risk. And many times they're able to find the booby traps as before they get guys inside the building. Apparently, in this case, they were not. The booby traps were very well hidden. These are concrete buildings, and what those guys will do is chisel out a section of a wall and pack it full of explosives, and then just put a thin layer of what we would call repeo or plaster over the top of it, so that it just looks like wall. But then they'll run that to a pressure plate in the door jamb or somewhere inside the house. And when an IDF soldier enters and steps on that plate, it sets off the charge and collapses the building on top of the soldiers. And that's what happened in this case. 4 IDF soldiers lost their lives. And very sad news there, of course. Now, other things that are happening in Gaza are more they're more exciting, I guess. You'll have to forgive me because I've didn't get any sleep at all last night because we were flying on a red eye over here. So my brain is moving a little slow today. It's about 8, almost 9 o'clock at night here in Armenia, and I need to get some sleep. But so the IDF has apparently been working with militia inside Gaza. This is made up of several powerful families, formed a tribe, and the guy that leads this tribe or this militia was not long ago a um, prisoner of Hamas. Now, I'm going to post over on chuckholton.com a very graphic video that you don't want to watch if you're at all squeamish. But I'll just describe it to you here rather than show it to you so we don't get demonetized. But The video shows a guy that uh, I don't know why, but Hamas was mad at him for whatever reason. Palestinian guy. They've got him tied up and blindfolded, and he's sitting on the ground with his knees pulled up to his chest, up against the wall, just sort of cringing. And then this piece of concrete about this big comes from behind the camera and just crushes the guy's legs. And the guy, of course, screams bloody murder. And then they turn him over and they start beating him with a stick, and his legs are all jellified and everything. It's just terrible, terrible. And I just tell you that to remind you that we can't hate these people enough. Okay, they are barbarians, completely uncivilized, all but feral, and they've got to be stopped. They only understand violence. There's no two ways about that. Hamas only understands violence, and they're not going to suddenly become civilized, rational actors that you can negotiate with anytime soon. It's going to take generations for that to happen. I'm very dry. Ooh, I'm dehydrated. So this militia leader was one of those captives that was being held hostage by, not hostage, but it was being held prisoner by Hamas in Gaza. And so when he managed to get out of there, whether he escaped or was released, I don't know. There's no love lost between him and his family and Hamas. And his tribe controls an area down in the south in Raqqa. So a lot of people have asked throughout the war what Israel does with the weapons that they find cached around Gaza, because they have found thousands of AK-47s and uh, explosives and grenades and rockets and all sorts of stuff. And they continue to find that stuff to this day. As a matter of fact, I've got video of a um, tunnel that they destroyed. They found another tunnel in Gaza. And take a look at this. Uh, this is the IDF blowing up this tunnel in Gaza. Now, this is a tunnel that probably cost, I don't know, hundreds of thousands at least to build. That's hundreds of thousands that could have gone to help the people of Gaza, but instead went to digging holes in the ground. And it was just destroyed by Israel. That's a infrared kind of night vision view of it, by the way. So a lot of people have asked what the IDF does with the weapons that they confiscate. And in many cases, they just destroy them because they're homemade, they're dangerous, they're not compatible with anything the IDF uses. So it's not like they could repurpose that and let their own soldiers use those weapons, because the IDF uses NATO standard weapons, M4s, and the kinds of weapons that the US Army uses. Whereas a lot of the weapons that they're capturing in Gaza are Soviet standard weapons, AK-47s and things like that. So they're different caliber. It's different ways to work them and take them apart and keep them clean and maintain them and all that sort of stuff. So uh, you don't want to mix and match, is what I'm saying. If you're in a firefight and you run out of ammo and you yell at the guy next to you, "Hey, give me a magazine," and he throws you a magazine, you try to stick it in your weapon, it's the wrong caliber, that's not going to help very well. So you want standardized weapons and ammunition across your force. So by and large, the IDF does not use the things that they capture in Gaza. But apparently they haven't destroyed everything either, because now what they're doing is turning those weapons over to this militia in Rafah, that the militia is using to, in their words, safeguard the deliveries of aid into their area. And they're calling on the people of Gaza to move back into the areas that they control, essentially submit to the leadership of this militia, and we will protect you, we will provide for you. food, medicine, shelter, whatever, down here in our area of Rafah. And what that's doing is it's driving a wedge between the Palestinian people and Hamas. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, long term, it's probably not the best possible thing because, well, these militias tomorrow could very well decide that they want to fight against the Israelis. So there's that, right? However, for now, it's actually helping the IDF get closer to accomplishing their goal of removing Hamas from power. Uh, they're fostering this sense of division inside Gaza, and that's a political move as much as it is a military one, for sure. So, not a bad thing there at all. Folks, if you have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you're subscribed and that you like uh, this live video. Just hit that thumbs up or that like button. And I always need to be reminded, so I'll remind you because it does actually help a lot. It tells YouTube that more people need to watch our videos, and so that's a that's a good thing. I mean, it helps the algorithm and all that. And really, surprisingly, less than half of the people who watch uh, these videos on a regular basis are returning viewers. About half are new viewers that have never watched me before. So, you hitting that like button, you subscribing, all of that helps the channel grow and it helps keep us in business. So, I appreciate that. This is something free that you can do. We're not going to spam you or give you a hard time about it. So, you guys like my shirt? This is a Black Rifle Coffee shirt. I should totally get a sponsorship from Black Rifle Coffee because I love their shirts and I wear them all the time, and you guys love them too. We've given some of them away. I have a dachshund at home in Panama, and I would love to dress him up like this. He thinks he's this dog. My dachshund is, he thinks he's a much bigger dog than he actually is, for sure. So now this sort of competition now that's taking place between Hamas and they're calling them popular. Uh, what do they call them? Popular militia, or I think is kind of the name that they're giving to these guys. They have the name of the tribe, but that's not something you'll remember. But these popular militias down there uh, are uh, they are calling for Hamas to be deposed and the Palestinian Authority to take over the day to day management of Gaza. Now, the IDF is not really cool on that idea. Right now, the IDF is planning on staying and managing it, at least militarily, for the indefinite future. Mama Rissa uh, is reminding me that uh, we are working on a sponsorship with Ground News. Thank you, MM. Very kind of you. Folks, if you haven't seen Ground News, it's a really cool app. And I've been a paying user of Ground News for probably more than a year already. Uh, and it's what it does is tells you a little more about the sources of the media stories that are out there on the internet on whatever topic you want. So if I want to go and find something that about what's going on in Israel, I can look at Ground News and it'll say, this website leans hard left, or this one leans right, or this one's pretty well in the middle. And it also grades the different outlets on their level of factuality. So I like Ground News a lot. And like I say, we're trying to get a sponsorship with them. We did get an affiliate link, so I can get you 40% off of the subscription to Ground News by going to the link that Mama Rissa put down in the chat. and recommend that you go check them out. Like I said, I mean, I haven't been, uh, I've just been a paying user of Ground News for some time. So I certainly endorse the product without a doubt. Wow, somebody's watching from Slovenia. That's awesome. Uh, so Hamas is fighting back against these popular militias. They targeted some members of that family and they put out a video showing, this is last week, showing them targeting this militia. And it shows those guys running around, obviously preparing to do something. And then they get hit with a anti-tank rocket by Hamas. So this kind of fighting is uh, not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, they are helping to fight Hamas, and that's kind of what you want, right? Question: is it possible Iran has already completed a nuclear weapon, and that's why the U.S. and Israel will not act despite the tough talk? Nicholas, that's a very, very good question. And we're going to talk about what's going on with Iran here in just a minute. I'm going to finish up with this part about Gaza. And then I'll also get to Carlos's question. Why have all the carriers, if they're not going to use it, stop wasting our taxes on just sailing? Yeah, that wasn't a question. But uh, so the aid that's going into Gaza is being routed, the majority of it, to the uh, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, which is an American uh, private military contractor, and they are passing out the aid at designated sites across Gaza. And despite some initial chaos, it's actually going pretty well. And Hamas is very upset about it because they're doing an end run around Hamas, and Hamas cannot steal the aid and then sell it back to their people. It's also turning the people more against Hamas because they're starting to realize we can get this stuff for free. We should have been getting this stuff for free the whole time, but Hamas has been selling it to us instead. So we don't like that, and obviously, very good thing. But here's what the media is not telling you: there is still aid in Gaza being distributed by the United Nations. And a lot of that aid is being stolen and is being sold by Hamas. But it's harder for them to sell the aid now because there is this free option. But if you want to get the free aid, you're going to have to go stand in a line with about 60,000 people in it. And so it's not that Hamas doesn't have a market. They still can sell the aid. They just aren't getting the prices that they once were. And the people that buy the aid from Hamas are quite a bit more salty about it than they were before. So, all in all, that's all a good thing. Now, what's not a good thing is that the United Nations is still trying to deliver aid inside Gaza without going through the IDF and their new system because they're undermining the IDF system, which is much better in terms of control. And there's video that was just released today by the IDF of a drone watching Hamas fighters magically transform into UN uh, aid workers. So I'm going to show you that video here. I can't see that. Um, I think it's this one. Nope, that one. There we go. Terrorists next to UN vehicles, those red circles there, are terrorists with guns standing around some clearly marked UN vehicles. You'll see a UN aid worker get out of the vehicle here. These guys in the blue vests, they're UN aid workers. And you'll see these guys transferring. The guy with a weapon puts his weapon away, goes into the UN warehouse right there, marked clearly on the roof of the warehouse. Now they're running out of the warehouse. So there's no question that Hamas is in control of the UN aid that's going in. Okay? No question. These guys are, you know, hobnobbing with Hamas. And there's your proof right there. So that's just what we've been saying all along. The United Nations is not interested in peace. If they were interested in peace in Gaza, they would be supporting the IDF and getting their hostages back and getting out. But that's not what they're doing. They are facilitating Hamas's continued existence. And this is egregious. I mean, it's the kind of thing that really should cause clear thinking countries around the globe to yank their funding from the United Nations. Look, if you guys are going to be supporting terrorists, like, we can't be a part of that. But the United States is still a part of it and is still giving money to the United Nations, still funding almost 30% of the UN budget. And I'm curious what you think about that. Do you think the United States should be funding the United Nations in any way, shape, or form? Or, do you think maybe in some limited way? Or do you think not at all? Personally, I think we should be a part of the United Nations, but we should be a lot more judicious about where our money goes and what it supports, and a much more limited basis. And there's no way we should be funding 30% of the United Nations when you see stuff like that. Okay. All right. Now let's move to Iran and what's going on there. The Iranians have, according to reports from uh, American intelligence agencies, the Iranians have started to enrich uranium in some new centrifuges that they built that can enrich the uranium much faster than their old centrifuges and could get it to that 90% threshold where it would be weapons grade in a very short period of time. I think that all but guarantees that there will be a strike on Iranian nuclear facilities probably by the end of June. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu apparently assured President Trump yesterday that the Israelis would not strike Iran unless President Trump declared that the negotiations had failed. And so he's putting the ball back in President Trump's court and saying, you decide if we're going to attack Iran. And that's essentially what he's saying. President Trump now has veto ability over any unilateral attack by Israel on the Iranians. And the Iranians are going to work that for all they are worth. Believe me. I mean, if you just keep an eye on what Iran has done over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, there's no question that the Iranians are going to pretend to have talks out of this side of their mouth, and out of this side, they're going to be telling their guys, get a bomb ready. Once we've got a bomb, then the negotiations are over. If Iran has the bomb, no more negotiations, because they will be able to uh, try to join the League of Nations that has nuclear weapons and that mutually assured destruction that comes with it. So if they're going to be stopped, they've got to be stopped before they get a bomb. And those days seem to be drawing closer. Now, I'm not trying to be uh, alarmist here, but it really is. I mean, there's a risk to what President Trump is doing, and he knows that. Obviously, if you're going to try to negotiate with savages, there's a very good chance it's going to backfire on you, and the end result will be the very thing that you were trying to avoid. That's always the case when you're negotiating with barbarians. And like I say, I'm sure President Trump knows that. But he still feels that it's worth negotiating over. And, it's leading a lot of people around the world to ridicule President Trump. They've started calling him Taco. I don't know if you heard that or not. Taco stands for Trump always chickens out. And obviously, that's a pretty pejorative term. Let's hope that he breaks that cycle. Now, we just today got news from the U.S. Navy that they are preparing for more strikes against the Houthis. So, this essentially unilateral ceasefire that we declared with the Houthis back a few weeks ago apparently is not satisfactory. Now, the Houthis never agreed really to meaningful ceasefire. They said, "Oh well, we'll stop uh, attacking U.S. Navy ships." Okay, the whole point of putting the Navy, our U.S. Navy ships in the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandab Straits, etc., was to get the Houthis to attack us instead of attacking other people. And so when the Houthis were shooting at U.S. aircraft carriers on a daily basis, that was really what we wanted. We wanted them to be expending their ammunition on vessels that have the defensive capability to shoot those missiles and drones and stuff out of the sky or out of the water. So for the Houthis to say, well, we won't shoot at those anymore, they never managed to do much damage at all. So all of their efforts to strike the U.S. Navy were in vain anyway. It's not that much of a loss for the Houthis, but they have continued to send missiles and drones into Israel on a daily basis ever since this ceasefire took effect. And I wonder if the reason that the United States Navy is gearing up to strike at Iran now, I'm sorry, not Iran, at the Houthis again now, is because that phone call between Netanyahu and Trump, where Netanyahu agreed not to strike Iran until President Trump said the negotiations are hopeless, came with some sort of quid pro quo. If Benjamin Netanyahu didn't say, yeah, we'll agree not to strike Iran until you say so, if you will do something about these stupid Houthis down there that keep shooting missiles at us. Now, we don't know that for sure, but reading between the lines, it seems like a fair bet that that's the conversation that took place. Now, the question of is it possible that Iran already has completed a nuclear weapon? It it is possible. There's a non-zero chance that they have a nuclear weapon. However, there I don't think that they would without at least Israel knowing. And that's because it's easy to forget that Israel has people inside everywhere inside the Iranian government, military, IRGC. The Israelis have extremely good intel on what the Iranians have and don't have, and what they can do and what they can't do, because they have a lot of sneaky spy stuff, people, and hardware inside Iran, just like they do in Lebanon, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I don't think that they do, because if they did, Israel would have already done something about it. And it is frustrating as a outside observer to watch the machinations in the between the politicians and the mullahs trying to finagle some sort of deal where we don't have to go in and strike at Iran militarily. Because if we do, that's going to be a costly, difficult, dangerous process. I'm not saying we're going to lose hundreds or thousands of U.S. troops. If we do go against Iran because our technology is just so far superior to Iran's. But it's not going to be an easy mission either. It's not just going to be a one and done. It's going to be a drawn out, long term conflict. And as my friend Michael Young likes to say, wars grow always. That's a maxim. Take it to the bank. And the second part of that is that wars grow unpredictably. And he's right, they do. So if we go kinetic against Iran, you don't know where that leads. And there's a non-zero chance that we will have troops on the ground in Iran at some point if we decide to go that route. So I think it's a good thing that we are being as circumspect as possible to to a fault, really. I mean, President Trump has been patient to a fault with the mullahs, and they're just mocking him and making him just look weak because he's not striking them. But I, to me, I count that as humility in some respect on the part of President Trump. Now, perhaps I'm being, you know, optimistic at the least about President Trump because he is has not been known to display much in the way of humility ever. A lot of people say he doesn't have a humble bone in his body. But if he's, really counting the cost of what it would take to actually fight a war with Iran, and he's always concerned about the money, and so he's looking for the cheapest solution to this problem. Well, then, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that the mullahs are not able to create a nuclear device in the time that we're waiting. But man, there's a risk. That is every bit as risky as striking them right now, I think. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. All right. Now, is there a chance? This is Shalom Shah. Is there a chance there could ever be peace in that region? Thoughts? Well, there are many sayings in the Middle East, and one of them is that there will never be peace until the Palestinians love their children more than they hate the Jews. That was by a former prime minister of, I think it's Golda Meir, uh, who said that. And that I think there's a lot of truth to that. Ann Coulter once said the only way to bring peace in the region is to go over there and kill their leaders and convert everybody else to Christianity. That's a better plan. Not very realistic, but it's a better plan. And I think bottom line is that the Bible tells us that that things are going to go from bad to worse in that area until at the appointed time. Now, I'm not an expert on biblical prophecy, uh, but I, I tend to feel that way, that you can't expect there to be peace in that area, in that region, because you have two mutually exclusive groups of people who are incompatible, that cannot live side by side. They did at one time, but to get them back to a point where they could again will take generations. So it's just not likely to happen, especially when the United Nations and other entities are assisting the terrorists in training new terrorists in the schools. And that's what UNRWA has been doing for a long time. Okay. Uh, if you bomb a nuclear weapon, does it explode? No, Chuck. It takes a very specific chain of events to get a nuclear weapon to explode. If, let's say that they had a nuclear missile and it had a nuclear warhead on it with nuclear material in there, and the Iron Dome system managed to shoot it out of the sky before it hit the ground, there would be some limited fallout in terms of radiation because of that fissile material that's in the bomb, but it would not cause a nuclear explosion to do that. Okay. Uh, so, all right. Now let's talk about Lebanon. Interesting stuff happening up there. I've been reporting for months that the Israelis have been striking in Lebanon on an almost daily basis, striking Hezbollah related targets, military targets, and continuing to gather lots and lots of intelligence on Hezbollah and then take action on that intelligence to destroy Hezbollah and keep them on the back foot. Excuse me. They do believe that Hezbollah still has a lot of missiles hidden underground. Many of those have the ability to reach Tel Aviv. And so they're not letting up. Now, they bombed Beirut yesterday, and it's been a while since they've done that. And the area that they were bombing was a proven site of Hezbollah activity. It's a command post for Hezbollah. So Israel announced that they were going to bomb it, announced to all the people in the area, we are going to bomb this building. If you're within 300 meters of this building, you need to leave and get out. And then there was the people left, but then there were soldiers from the Lebanese army who came in and went into that building. Why? Because the Lebanese army is trying to use its soldiers as human shields to stop the Israelis from bombing that building. Now, does this mean that the Lebanese army is in cahoots with Hezbollah? Ooh, that uh, you could make a case for that, for sure. However, the Lebanese army claims that no, we're trying to take the lead at clearing out Hezbollah. So let us do it. We'll get rid of Hezbollah out of these places. You just tell us where they are if you find them. And we'll even work with you and we'll tell you if there's one that we take out. But don't, stop bombing our people. Stop bombing Lebanon because that's really not good for the reelection chances of the politicians that are in power in Lebanon. To have bombs going off all the time. Israel said, no, we're going to bomb that building. Get your people out of it. And the Lebanese soldiers wouldn't get out. So Israel dropped 12 of those knock-knock bombs, just a small bomb on the roof of the building to let them know that they were about to bomb the building. And I think eventually the soldiers did leave. They did get out of the building. Israel flattened the building, and there you go. So interesting times, to say the least, in Lebanon. And it is still just mind-boggling to me that we are still funding the Lebanese army to the tune of about 300 billion a year. That's million, 300 million. Uh, Even though we've shut down the USAID, we've canceled virtually every penny of foreign aid around the world, except for Lebanon and Egypt, trying to keep those guys in line. And so that's insane, right? I mean, that's just insane. Uh, the Lebanese army, about a third of their soldiers moonlight as Hezbollah or have family who are in Hezbollah. So you're not going to convince them to really go hard after Hezbollah. It's just not likely to happen. Hezbollah just won an election in Lebanon, which is mind-boggling to me. So obviously the people in Lebanon, hey, you just voted for these guys, so how about we keep bombing them? You get what you voted for. There you go. Okay, now Syria. This is interesting. If you haven't listened to anything else I've said on this live, you're going to want to hear this about Syria. So, forces of the GSS, that's I got to back up a little bit. HTS, Hayat Tahrir al Sham, took over Syria from Bashar al Assad's army back in December. HTS is made up of former ISIS fighters, former Al Qaeda fighters, and other nasty militias that are extremists. They don't have much love for Turkey, although Turkey, they have worked with Turkey to some extent, kind of a, enemy of my, uh, wait, uh, friend, no, enemy of my enemy is my friend. There you go. And so, they have had some limited contact with the Turks, but they're they're not friendly. They actually squabble and fight amongst themselves quite a bit. But the GSS, the HTS, is now calling their security forces the General Security Service, GSS. And so think of it as the police force for the new interim government of Syria under al-Shara. Now they're trying very hard to gain legitimacy in the eyes of the world. And it's obvious that they are prioritizing that above implementing the things that they say they want to implement, even in the draft of their new constitution and other memos that they put out, which talk more about implementing Sharia law. But they really want to get the sanctions lifted off of Syria and improve things there. So they know to do that, they've got to at least make it look like they are towing the line for the West. And so, Israel has taken over about 15 kilometers deep buffer zone from their border inside Syria, and they are holding that area in southern Syria. And the IDF says they're not leaving. They said that they're going to stay there for the indefinite future. They're building bases in there. Well, Israel was attacked from Syria last week by some drones. There were drones that were fired, or even missiles maybe, out of Syria into Israel. Nobody was hurt. They were shot down. It was all fine. But that obviously is a non-starter for Israel. So Israel, of course, every chance they get, they're bombing things inside Syria that they deem to be a threat. The GSS is now saying to the Israelis, you don't need to do that. We'll take care of it. And so they are sending GSS agents, GSS police, into the area that is right next to the part that Israel holds. And they are acting as a human buffer between the extremists who are shooting. They were Hashishabi, they were Iranian backed militias that fired those rockets, most likely. And there's a fighter jet going overhead right now here in Armenia. That's interesting. It must be out doing some training. Uh, so now it looks like the GSS is trying to put a lid on these Iranian-backed militias inside Syria to stop them from provoking another response from Israel that would cause Israel to take more ground or blow more things up. Right? So that's an interesting development, to say the least. Now, there are still a lot of smuggling happening through Syria into Jordan, into Israel, smuggling of weapons and drugs and explosives and cash and things like that. Israel has really stepped up efforts to put a stop to that practice. They've captured a bunch of smugglers and killed some of them. They have confiscated all sorts of contraband, and they are starting to build a Trump wall along the U.S. along the Israeli-Jordanian border. I'm going to go down and see that when I go to Israel in July, and I'll bring you reports on that border wall, and we'll see how that's going. So uh, anyway, there's still a tremendous amount of uh, violence against Israelis happening on a essentially daily basis in Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron. Rock throwings, shootings, rammings, all sorts of stuff. And the IDF is ramping up their efforts in there. But the big focus right now is Gaza. The IDF had some of their most uh, intense firefights of the entire war today in Gaza, in central Gaza, because they're pushing into areas that they've never been in before. Believe it or not, there are still areas in Gaza the IDF has never set foot in, at least not since like 2014 or so. So they are pushing into those areas, and that holds a great promise and great risk. They already control more than half of the Gaza Strip, and they are maintaining control of it, not just clearing it. And so they're pushing on to try to take 100%. However, every 100 meters that they push into areas that they've not been in before raises the chances that some of the living hostages are going to get executed. That's just a fact. And as a matter of fact, a recent poll in Israel showed that most Israelis do not believe that the current operation in Gaza is going to result in the return, a safe return of any of their hostages. So it's a dilemma for Israel without a doubt, but it's a decision that has to be made because on the other hand, you've got these people that are protesting every day, every week, big protests, trying to put pressure on the Israeli government to just accept any kind of peace deal, basically capitulate to Hamas's demands, let Hamas survive in return for the release of their hostages. Do whatever it takes by any means necessary, get our hostages back alive, even if that means losing the war, which would just guarantee that more hostages will be taken in the future. So that's not a good plan. But on the other side is a large and growing group of IDF soldiers who are writing open letters to their commanders saying, look, let us finish this or pull us out of here. Quit jerking us around. Quit, you know, telling us that we're going to be able to go in here and we're going to actually finish this thing, then not allowing us to do the job because of politics, right? And so there's a large amount of pressure building on the Israeli government from both directions, and that's not good. Okay, question back here. Your thoughts on this is from KP1, the shutdown of the Israeli summit due to threats. Oh, back here in the States. Um, that's thank you for asking that question, KP1. I actually interviewed Luke Hilton, one of the guys from AOEL, about an hour ago, and I'm going to be posting that interview shortly here on the Hot Zone. Uh, so, for those of you that don't know what happened, AOEL is a Christian organization that has a base in Samaria in Israel, and they are there to support Israeli farmers and ranchers. And so they go out and they help Israeli farmers harvest their crops and plant vineyards and do all sorts of things like that. And they recruit civilian volunteers, a lot of them from the United States, to come over and spend a week harvesting grapes or fruit or something on a farm in Israel to help out the Israeli farmers. that are living in the land. And they have an annual seminar or meeting that they put on in the United States. Last year, they almost had to cancel it because of threats for their safety. This year, they were going to hold it in Dallas, and they had over 1,000 people signed up, and they got so many threats that they had to change venues. So they went to another venue that was a private venue, and then the police force from Dallas came to them and said, if you guys go ahead with this event, we're going to charge you $600,000 for security, because the threats are that high right now. After these people got killed in Washington, D.C., after the Boulder, Colorado terrorist incident that happened last week, the threats are so high, and they're getting direct threats from people like Antifa, left wing whack jobs, and jihadis in the United States, that they will do violence against people at this seminar if it takes place. And so they didn't cancel it, but they've postponed it. And they're trying to come up with a new venue and a new place and time to, to have their thing. And it's just unbelievably sad and frustrating and just maddening that in 2025, in the United States of America, a Christian organization cannot have a meeting standing to support Israel because the police force refuses to protect them unless they get paid, and because whack jobs and extremists from across the country are threatening to burn it down. The people who claim to be all for free speech. See, this is the real perverse thing about these groups like Antifa. To them, words, if I say I support Israel, they'll say that's violence. And so that's wrong. But actual violence, them attacking the venue and setting fire to it or something, that's free speech. So speech is violence, and violence is free speech. That's just how backwards the left has it, and not just in the United States, but around the world. And we're seeing that all over the place. Um, so if you want to support the guys at AOEL, you can go to serveisrael.com, and I recommend you do that. And I'm going to air the interview I just did with Luke Hilton, one of the guys from AOEL. He's in Dallas now, trying to figure out where they're going to hold this thing, if they're even going to be able to do it. And I'll air that probably late tonight or tomorrow morning, something like that. So, all right, Diane, good to see you there. We were just talking about you, Diane, at dinner tonight, because they're talking about going down into the dungeon at Horvid Op, where um, Gregory the Illuminator was held in this dungeon for 13 years. And you can climb down a very narrow, very steep ladder down into the dungeon where he was held, and see it for yourself. And uh, it's if you're claustrophobic, you're not going to want to do that. But Diane made it down there, and everybody was remembering that today on our tour. Like, well, Diane made it. That, she's intrepid enough to do it. We can do it. So you encourage people, Diane. Did you know that the U.S. lost two fighter jets due to ship complications, and then seven drones? Yes, I was aware of that. We've reported on that thoroughly um, in the past. Wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. That's right. Opraina is her feet up. Yeah, she's been resting today. Uh, Thank you for your concern there for our little prego daughter-in-law over here in Armenia. We'll be back over to Armenia in August to visit our new grandbaby over here too. So a lot going on. I've actually got a interview request in with the president of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, And I don't know what the chances are that I'll actually get that interview, but it'd be awesome if I did. And if I did, I will bring it to supporters over at Locals first. So if you want to get first access to the videos and interviews that I put up, just go to chuckholton.com and sign up over there. You get a lot of extra content. And like I said, I'm going to be posting this extremely graphic video of Hamas breaking the legs of some guy that apparently got sideways with him in Gaza. This is a Palestinian guy. Horrific stuff. Just terrible. But I only put that stuff up not to glorify it or anything like that, but just because we need to remember who we're dealing with here. And we need to remember how brutal and barbaric these guys are. And so I put that stuff up there just to remind you of that. Okay. It's basically a system for humankind. And the moment you speak out, you're speaking against it. Okay. The grass withers, the flower. Look, if you're not asking a question, please don't put it in all caps because it, it distracts me. I'm looking for all caps so I can answer your questions. But we're coming up right up on an hour, so I'm going to let you go there. Thank you very much for watching. Again, make sure that you like this podcast and subscribe to the Hot Zone, and go over to chuckholton.com and follow us over there. Also, just mention one more time, Ground News is an app that you can get. Just go to Ground News. It's again on in the App Store, and it's an aggregator that lets you tell it what you want to get news about, and then it'll give you the news from different outlets, and it'll rate those outlets based on where they stand on the political spectrum and how factual their reporting is. So whether or not it's a trustworthy thing. And it's actually saved me from reporting things that were incorrect just because Ground News pointed out that this is a sham website, or this is a website that's owned by the Qataris or Russia or something like that. So I recommend you go to Ground News, and you can get 40% off on a subscription to Ground News right now by using the affiliate link that Mama Marissa just put in the chat. So thank you very much for that, Mama Marissa. Genuine thoughts about your feelings regarding Trump's big, beautiful bill. I'm going to leave that for another time. It's not germane to our conversation today here. So thank you very much for watching. Love you guys. We're going to be on this tour for the next 11 days here in Armenia, having an amazing time. I'm going to bring you a lot of great video from that, from the tour. And I will also be doing these nightly lives, hopefully every night, reporting on what's going on in Ukraine and Israel and elsewhere around the globe. So stay tuned.